Hi guys, I'm going to walk you through a quick tutorial for how to set up your mini outlines for the writing practice and tutorial that we did in class today. You have my permission to work through the first one with me and actually use my structure to help you fill in number one. Number two and number three will be done on your own, but I'm hoping working through this tutorial will give you an indication of how to set up your mini outlines. This is a really imperative part of this class, so I will encourage that if you have further questions, please email me at my school email. All right. So to start off with, the first thing you need to do whenever you create an outline is you need to know what your argument is going to be. Remember, the argument of a writing is called the thesis or assertion or point of view. We tend to refer to it in social studies as thesis or assertion. And the thesis in this case, you'll notice that yours was blank. And the way that I created my thesis was I took the question and I restated it in the form of an argument. Now, there are times where you may have to add more words, but in the case of number one, it actually works out that I can simply say and take the question and say religious festivals impacted the development of Greek culture and leave it at that. It's a complete argument because somebody could say the opposite. That's how I know it's an argument. Somebody could say religious festivals did not impact the development of Greek culture. So if it sounds like a clear, complete thought, that's how you know you've created your thesis. But you're going to notice, so I'm saying in this case that they did impact, and I'm going to use my evidence to prove it. So the next thing that I did was I remember you skip the supporting detail statement and I go down to my specs. I read page 111 and I actually found one of the religious festivals that was created in the honor of the god Dionysus was the origination of the play. So I took a quote from the book and I said, the Greeks, you'll notice I embed my quote. You should never start a sentence with quotation marks in writing. You should always embed it, meaning you have to put a couple words before it before you can drop the quote in. And then the remainder of it, I took the quote from the book. It says, originated the play, a celebration in honor of Dionysus, the god of wine and fertility. At these events, the audience sat on a hillside around an open space where a chorus chanted, a story about Dionysus. I put the wrong words in, so I'll change that quickly. And then you'll notice that I've ended the quotation marks. And just as you've learned in English class, you'll notice there's no punctuation. I put parentheses text with a little comma, the page number, and end my parentheses with a period. Now, in normal writing, if this came from any other book, it would be the author's last name. But because it's the textbook, remember in social studies, you have our permission to simply put text. Okay? So I have this thesis and I have this evidence. Now my job is I have to build the story. And the first place that I'm going to start to build the story is the supporting detail. Now, remember, there are two parts to the supporting detail statement. The first part is you need to look at your thesis and decide, is there any, or you need to look, you need to look at your specs and is there any historical background that you need to build to give the reader an understanding? So I created a simple sentence that said there were many types of religious celebrations held in many Greek city-states in honor of the gods. What I'm doing there is I'm showing the reader that what I'm about to talk to you about is a celebration and it's about a particular god. So I simply just create a little historical background about city states and that they celebrated their gods. And Dionysus's play is one of the examples. Then I have to introduce my specs. Now, in this case, my introduction is not extreme. I simply say some of these festivals were for entertainment. And that's my introduction. Because the next sentence is I'm going to explain to you what that entertainment was in my unbiased, detailed fact. Okay. So, your supporting detail statement, I always say 1 to 2 sentences to start. Sometimes, when we looked at the Solon example, for instance, today, your historical background might need a couple more sentences depending. But the background should not be about the thesis, it should be about the specs. So, when you look at the specs, is there anything from that that needs an introduction more than just like there were festivals? Like, I gave a sentence that talks about there were celebrations in honor of the gods. Okay. Then I have my evidence already done. Now I go on to the analysis. Remember, the analysis statement is an explanation of how your specs, this specs, proves the thesis correct. Usually, analysis statements have the word because in them, because that means that you're clearly explaining why. Okay? So what I did, this is practice, but I said religious festivals. You'll notice that's the same as my thesis. And then I recognize my specs. I say, like the Greek plays to honor Dionysus. So I recognize the specs that I just talked about. Impacted the development of Greek culture. You'll notice again words from my thesis. Impacted the development of Greek culture. You'll see it right here. Because and this is the part that comes from my brain. This is my defense. They provided a venue that allowed for the growth of Greek creative expression through music, drama, and dance. And that to me justifies it's a creative means that allows the Greek to express themselves. So religion led to plays, which allowed to the furthering of Greek music, drama, and dance. So I've made a correlation that impacting culture by allowing people to have a way to creatively express themselves. And I did it in one sentence. So some of the tricks of the analysis started off with some of the words from your thesis, add in recognition to your old specs. Add in recognition to your specs, add more words in from the thesis, and then add the word because. Now, as we move forward, I'm going to push you to become a little more sophisticated in your writing. But in the early stages, I want you to understand this is not just a random, vague explanation. You need to tell the reader how this specific example in particular proves your thesis. The analysis is almost like, Ms. Barksdale, I chose this evidence because. A lot of you were very vague on your first writing piece and you didn't narrow into the specs that you chose. You're also going to notice that I only talked about one thing. Your textbook talks about the Olympics, talks about the origin of the play. For my specs, I chose one piece of evidence. That's it. I didn't talk about the Olympics and the origination of the play. So be careful with that. Okay? So, as I said, you have my permission to go ahead and use this to help you complete the first one as a model. The two that I'm going to grade are 2 and 3, so I'm actually not going to grade 1, just 2 and 3. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. Good luck.